Welcome back to the Let's Have It podcast. Today we're talking signage and IPTV with Johnny from Amino. Amino are pioneers in these solutions, and these solutions are prime for businesses that want reliability, remote management, and future-proof devices. Really looking forward to this one. Welcome, Johnny.
Hi.
Let's start with the basics. Tell us what Amino actually does and how your devices support modern digital signage and video delivery needs.
Amino's been building media players and developing software for enterprise and actually pay TV as well for 26, 27 years. So we were pioneers in the field of video over IP, and we've really developed that, expanded it over the years. We've seen every transition from different technologies through to where we are today. Really high quality media players, a really skilled team of engineers doing firmware and management systems. So that's our core product set, and of course, I can't emphasize enough the quality of the products. That's something we're known for, and also the quality of our support team.
Yeah, I mean, the quality being a key piece. We've been using sort of Amino media players for digital signage for years and years, every iteration. So, tell us more about, what the current iteration is for your media players and what the standout features of those that, make them so viable for these environments. Okay,
well, our current media player series is H200 and H200W. They're a high performance media player. The W adds Wi-Fi, Bluetooth 5.2. But the other thing that we should never forget about is the management system, because it differentiates our platform every day of the week. So there are lots of media players in the market, but a really well managed media player is something that, it's so much easier, more cost effective to deploy. And then you combine that with the skills we have in the firmware. So we take the firmware and we add an awful lot of additional features to make it something that integrates with point of sale systems and integrates with other business systems, has a good quality browser. It's easy to integrate Android apps on. So we add an awful lot of technology above the hardware. So it's all of the software and features we add on top that really differentiate the platform. But standout features, I would say the management system, the security we bring to that platform, and then the flexibility we build into the different environments that we add onto the base OS.
Yeah, and you mentioned before Amino have been pioneers in this and been doing it for 26 years.
Yeah.
So a lot of the clients that we speak to when we do deploy these sort of products and systems are talking about future-proofing, so that they don't have to rip and replace every 2 to 3 years. So talk us through how Amino ensures sort of future-proofing when we do deployments using your products.
Well, one thing I see is a lot of media players, the vendors don't really update the software platforms very frequently. First of all, I think that's a massive mistake from the point of view of security. Today's world, with the number of cybersecurity incidents there are, you really can't be deploying that in a corporate network. So we continually update the firmware so we've got the latest security patch levels on the devices. And then the feature development. So I mentioned what we add into the firmware, the different APIs and features we're continually adding. It gives the platform a longer life. This isn't a static device that you deploy, you buy it, and it never does anything different. We're adding features, adding in low latency video. We're adding in monitoring features for some of our customers, the ability to run multiple apps, swap between different apps at different times for different use cases. There's so many different things we add on. So it's an evolving platform. I feel we're very customer driven. So we react to the needs and the requests from our customers. And it gives the hardware a much longer life. You don't need to be changing hardware every 3-4 years. Again, our reputation is for good quality hardware that lasts many, many years. And I still see old Aminos from 14, 15 years ago.
So do I.
In the field. Okay, I get support requests for them. We do what we can, but that's not the way some other vendors think. We're thinking long term for our products.
Well, that actually does sort of lead me into the next point that we wanted to cover anyway. And you sort of mentioned it there, that you guys are more than just buying a product and leaving it and does the same thing forever. A lot of the clients that we work with do want to sort of work on that, almost like set it and forget it, I suppose is the best way to sort of describe it. So how are you guys making sure that you're still doing the same set it and forget it sort of reliability from a long-term perspective, whilst being more than that?
There's probably a few aspects and a few ways to answer that question. The first thing is how to deploy the device, and one of the principles we have is you should be able to deploy devices with zero touch. So zero touch provisioning, it's built into the firmware, how we how we implement the boot flow, how the device gets its settings, its firmware from the management system. So the objective is zero-touch provisioning. You should be able to just plug in the network. It installs firmware, it installs its config, it installs the applications, it starts them and it runs. Okay, so that's certainly one aspect of it. Another thing that's very important is that it's really easy to deploy updates and deploy changes to applications. I know you say set it and forget it, but you are going to have to update things in the field.
Of course.
Okay, so we make sure that that can all be done across large groups of devices using the management system. So you set a config against a group of devices in our management system, and all devices get their personality from that group and from that back-end system. So it's very easy to change a config and allow your boxes in the field to automatically update. You don't have to go around, and we definitely don't have to start going around with USB sticks and things like that. We want to do this all centrally, and you do it once for all devices in your field deployment that have a particular personality. Okay, so you might have 3-4 groups deployed. One does signage, maybe one's doing video. You've different applications. You should have 3 or 4 different configs in those devices, and it's a simple case of updating and press go.
Makes it easy. So one thing that we actually like, I guess, from deploying these ourselves is the flexibility of your devices.
Yep.
And integrating with different CMS platforms. So I guess, there's certain ones where we would recommend a CMS platform. We'll talk about the likes of like Now Signage, something like that. But for those clients that maybe already have a platform in mind, where they're maybe not seeing the reliability from the hardware, can you talk about how you guys integrate with different platforms and how it would benefit?
Yeah, well, there are fundamental technology choices that make this easy. These are Android-based media players, but we've also added a really good modern browser. Now, Android doesn't always have a good reputation in this market. It's not because of the platform, it's because of how it's managed. So we keep it up to date. We're always in the latest security patch level. We're currently on a June 25 security patch level. There aren't many other players in the market that do that. But the nice thing about Android is just about every organization has an Android app or a team of Android developers, or they have a browser development team. So by having those 2 ways to integrate, it makes it very easy for us to talk to a new vendor, talk to a new partner, and find they've got an app, test it. We're up and running very quickly. Now, you mentioned CMS systems, and most of them will, in fact, almost all of them either have a browser-based or an Android-based application. We then run a test and certification program ourselves, so that if there's a new CMS that needs to be onboarded, it goes through our QA team. We have a set of tests. We're not testing the CMS, that's not our job. But we're testing its interaction with the platform, with the firmware we provide, with our management system. So we can then say that we know how to run this, we know the quirks of it, and also we've got connections into the vendor organization so that if there's a support issue, we know who to talk to. So that again is helping, our customers, makes it easier for them to onboard a new CMS or a new application. We've got the technology. We do the due diligence up front before we say this is certified, this works, and we keep the commercial and support relationships so we can actually deal with it in the field if there is an issue.
So you mentioned a couple of times in a few of the things that you've touched on there, Orchestrate.
Yeah.
If you can sort of dive in a little bit more about what Orchestrate actually is.
Yes.
And how that can then help IT teams that might be managing like multiple sites or, different devices across the same site, and how easy that then becomes for them.
Okay. So I like to split Orchestrate really into 2 main functions. The first one is about configuring and setting up a device, and I've already touched on that. So when a device gets deployed in the field, it calls back to Orchestrate, and if the firmware needs to be updated, if there's a newer version available, it'll download it. Then there's a huge number of configuration parameters that we can configure the operating system with. It'll download the correct configuration for that deployment, and it'll then download any application you want to put on that device and restart and run all of that. That's one aspect of it. One thing I should say on that is we control the release of the firmware to our customers. We do not push it into the field. So customers get the choice when they have tested, when they're ready to actually release the firmware into their field deployment. there are other environments, some of the system on chip, for example, where really it's under the control of the manufacturer, and I don't think that's a good way to go. I think people need to do their own testing, say when they're ready. So we release it into a group within Orchestrate. The end user organization makes the decision when to deploy. Okay. So that gives you the whole configuration management of the devices. It allows you to update them. It allows you to change config of the OS. There's a huge amount of flexibility in the firmware we provide. But the other side of the platform is about in-field support and operation of the device. So, the most obvious feature we have there that people love is the remote UI. So being able to stream low bandwidth video back into the cloud and to a browser environment where a support team can see exactly what's on screen on the device. You also can interact with that through a virtual remote control. But equally important, sometimes it gets overlooked because it's maybe not as visual, but there's a huge number of diagnostic parameters and data we pull back from the devices. So lots of very common parameters, but there's some that allow you to see exactly how a device is operating in the field. For example, one useful use case is if HDMI port is active or inactive, we can see that, we bring that back into the UI. A common thing that you find people doing is perhaps not plugging in the HDMI cable correctly, so you get the report of a black screen. But if you look at the remote view through our remote UI, you'll actually see a picture because the device is decoding, it is putting a picture out to the HDMI, but you're still getting a customer report of a black screen. But you can diagnose these problems because you can see if the HDMI negotiation has occurred and completed successfully. So those are the sorts of things we pull back. We also pull back information about the connected screens overheated. We can download bug reports from the device, so good if you're getting into the next level of debug and tracking issues, and we can actually stream syslog back into the cloud. So where other devices you maybe have to go and install a syslog server if you've got really complex, difficult things to debug, we're able to stream that back into the cloud with the click of a button and give our support team in Portugal or Hong Kong direct access to syslog anywhere in the world. So really, really powerful features. Some of them are things that you'll maybe use directly yourself as an end customer, particularly more advanced ones. Some of them are maybe features that when you call the Amino support team, it allows us to just much more quickly react and respond and help our customers. So very powerful set of tools.
Yeah, and so with all that in mind then, so there's a point here where it's essentially a health check service then, so it keeps the downtime from really occurring quite severely. Yeah,
we can react very, very quickly through these tools, and actually, the configuration I've touched on of the firmware also helps us react quickly. We've got so much configuration in the firmware that it allows us to control and manage protocols that are maybe in other devices you need to do a firmware update for.
And another big thing, I guess, for you guys, and please do correct me if I'm wrong, is more around sustainability, and that's a big concern for our clients as well. So, I mean, I know you guys do like upcycling, sort of extended hardware lifestyles, that sort of stuff. So, how's that work, and why is that important?
Well, a few years ago, we started, we got a lot more serious about sustainability, recyclable materials. So we went through a process with all of our products, ensuring that we aren't including plastic bags and that sort of material. And a lot of the plastic bags maybe that you get remote controls in, they are recyclable, but what you find is people don't recycle them. No. So whether they're recyclable or not, we've tried to strip them out of our products. We're doing things like using paper ties for to wrap cables, putting remote controls in paper bags. All of the cardboard packaging that's used is recyclable and recycled. So we've done a lot of things there in the product. We also, a few things you shouldn't forget. The fact that we aim to have a product that has a very long lifespan and last in the market is actually a very good thing from the point of view of sustainability. You're not continually replacing hardware, but you're also not going through that process of sending engineers out, reinstalling devices every 2, 3, 4 years. So that longevity is another very good thing for the sustainability of the product. And back to Orchestrate. If you can diagnose and fix problems remotely, you're taking away engineer visits, you're taking people off the road. They're much more efficient, they're achieving much more, and they're not, doing trips on the road and travel to try and fix something that potentially is a really, really simple problem. So, and, you know, we've done other things. We've done buyback campaigns and things. We do these, you know, as and when it makes sense, depending on what products are in the market, what's new, and what, you know, we can maybe upcycle and recycle. So we've got a number of different strands here. I don't think there's any, you know, there's not any one thing that we should be looking at. We should be looking at everything. We should be looking across our business, and I feel that's what we've done, starting from, you know, it's too easy to just focus on, oh, if we get recycled cardboard, you know, great, recycle cardboard, but what about your management? Can you take picks off the road? Can you make the whole life cycle of the product efficient and sustainable? And that's what I believe we've gone a long way to achieving that. There's always more you can do, but I think we've done an awful lot.
I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball for you. You mentioned earlier about there being sort of older Amino devices that you still get support calls about because they last forever.
Yes.
And you've just mentioned then about buybacks.
Yeah.
Is there something that you guys do around sort of your old products that people do want to go down an upgrade cycle to the newer H200 version or no? Yeah,
so we have done buybacks in the past. It just depends if we can do it in a way where it's sustainable, and if it, you know, do we have a use for products? Can we recycle them? Can we refurbish them? What generation of products they're you know, we're being offered in the buyback scheme? So it tends to be a little bit ad hoc. I don't want to be pretending that we'll do buybacks and we can recycle everything that gets sent back.
So it's case by case.
I think it's much better to be honest with people. Sometimes it's efficient and you can do it. Other times it's less sustainable to bring product back centrally and try and do something with it when really it has reached the end of its life. So it is very much case by case.
Fair enough. Just thought I'd throw the curveball in there and ask the question anyway.
Of course.
And finally then, as we get towards the end here, what's next for Amino? You know, what's coming now? What are you guys seeing?
Yeah.
What's new?
So, you know, there's things happening and certainly in video which are quite exciting. We've done some work with low latency and ultra low latency video, and I see a lot more happening there, particularly to support the sports betting and stadium market. So, you know, we've worked with partners where we can do sub-second video over consumer broadband, really. And that really opens up new markets. I think it opens up new use cases. It allows transition away from things like satellite and some of the sports markets. So I find that very exciting. I think we're only touching the surface of the use cases that that starts to create. And, you know, as usual, customers find new use cases that I've never thought of. So great to have the technology and to see where that's going to. There's a lot of development going into Orchestrate at the minute, and we're going to launch a completely new updated GI for our management system, really focusing on the usability of the platform. And from there, I think there's a lot more we can do with analytics and bringing AI into that, just to give our customers the ability to drive the platform more efficiently and you know, get a lot more out of the data that's available.
Thanks so much, Johnny, for popping in and talking us through everything that Amino is doing at the moment, the hardware, the software, and the management, and everything in between that really makes their digital signage platform sing. If you're ready to upgrade your signage setup from a more sustainability perspective, more control, and just less headaches, please do reach out to us at ClearVC. We'd be happy to help. And thanks again for listening to the Let's Have It podcast.